Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the elite members of the channel. Thank you for your continued and dedicated support. I appreciate it very much. Without further ado, it is time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Scary Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I was 9 when it happened. I remember the cold of the floor tiles under my sneakers, the sterile hum of the building's fluorescent lights, and the way that place always smelled like metal and formaldehyde. But most of all, I remember him, the guard. He had a name, but in my memory, it's smudged out like something too awful to say aloud. Back then, he was just a nice man at the front desk who folded me paper airplanes and let me sit in a swivel chair when Mom and Dad were stuck late in the lab. They were both biologists, government researchers stationed at a hulking repurposed facility where nature was studied behind locked doors. What was once built for secrets now held microscopes and petrified specimens. They said it was for science, for policy, for the good of the planet. I think it was built for something else. The guard was always there. Day shift, night shift, didn't matter. Like he lived there. Like he didn't have a life beyond those concrete walls. He smiled too much, too wide. I never noticed then. Kids don't see monsters until they bare their teeth. That night, it was late, later than usual. The building was dead quiet, and the humming lights flickered like they were trying to stay awake. My parents were still deep in their work, lost in data and dissected things. The guard leaned over the counter and asked if I wanted to join him on his rounds. "Let's make it fun," he said. I agreed. I was bored, and I trusted him. We started at the top, room by room. He flipped the lights on, stepped inside, then off again when we left. I followed a few paces behind, not wanting to step into the dark alone. He laughed at that, soft but sharp, like he was amused by something I didn't get. As we descended through the building, he grew more animated, jittery, giddy even, like he was counting down to something. I remember his hands shaking, not out of nerves, but excitement. He talked more, nonsense stuff, about how some rooms were forgotten, how nobody ever really checked the sub-basement. He grinned and told me it was our secret place. By the time we reached the second basement, something shifted. His voice got higher, lighter, his footsteps quicker, and the lights, he started turning them off faster before I'd even left the room. I told myself it was just part of the game. Then we got to a lab. Last one on that side. Cold, echoey, long metal tables stretched into the shadows. He turned on all the lights this time, made 2 paper planes, tossed one across the room, and handed me the other. "Go get it," he said, eyes gleaming. I ran after the plane like a fool. The lights went out. The door clicked. I spun around and saw him on the other side of the glass, locking it. No smile this time, just calm, businesslike. He turned and walked away, flipping switches as he went. drowning me in darkness, one corridor at a time. I screamed, kicked the glass, cried until I couldn't breathe. The shadows in that room came alive, crawling things with too many legs, shapes that whispered my name from corners I couldn't see. My imagination or something else, I still don't know. Hours passed. I curled into a ball and stopped making noise. I don't know how long I stayed there, but eventually, I saw light again. A beam, footsteps, my mom's voice, frantic, broken. Then the door flew open. They found me. The guard was already back at reception like nothing had happened. My parents nearly killed him on the spot. He told them I must have gotten lost in a building with one way in, one way out, locked rooms and cameras. They reported him. He was arrested. Not for what he did to me. No, that wasn't what stuck. The charges were for theft, conspiracy, smuggling government hardware out with a ring of criminals, old computers, equipment, even research. But that's not what keeps me up at night. It's what the cops didn't charge him for, what they couldn't prove. Because here's what I never told anyone. When I was locked in that lab, just before the lights went out, I noticed something strange. A second paper airplane, not the one he threw. This one was tucked under a desk, already there. Inside it, folded carefully, was a piece of paper. It had a name on it, mine, and beneath it, scribbled in shaky red ink, Lot number 4, quiet, intelligent, unchipped, ready. I still don't know what I was supposed to be ready for, but someone was waiting, and I was almost delivered. I've always liked to go where others wouldn't. Maybe that's why urban exploration, or herbics, as some call it, hooked me so deeply. Abandoned hospitals, derelict hotels, forgotten barracks, the filth, the silence, the stillness. It felt like touching the pulse of the dead. At first, I wasn't brave. Just a teenage girl tagging along with friends, all of us pretending we were fearless. But fear fades when nothing bites back. Over time, I learned how to move through rot without breathing it in, how to creep in and out unnoticed, how to disappear in places no one cared about. Eventually, I started going alone. It felt cleaner that way. By 2018, I had checked off nearly every ruin near my town in eastern Germany. So I dug deeper. That's when I found it. An old World War II era bunker, buried in the belly of a forest I've never heard of, 3 hours away. It wasn't listed anywhere. No blog entries, no photographs, just a scrap of mention in a forgotten forum thread and coordinates. Perfect. I left early that July morning, packed for an overnight, though I planned to be back before sundown. The deeper I drove, the more the trees twisted together, hiding the sun and everything else. My GPS blinked out 10 kilometers before I got there, like it didn't want to see what was coming. The bunker was real, a low, brutal thing, half swallowed by moss and soil. I almost turned around when I saw it. It looked too untouched. But curiosity won. It always does. I pried the door open with a crowbar. It groaned, like something waking up. The air inside was thick, even though my mask, the stench clawed at my throat. Damp, rot, and something sweet and wrong. I stepped inside. It was pitch black. My headlamp flickered once, then steadied. I passed rusted cots, collapsed shelves, and moldy papers. But in the first room, that made my stomach clench. I found a ripped pillow, its guts spilling out in clumps. It was hair, human, coarse and blackened at the roots. I told myself it had to be from the war. Maybe they stuffed pillows with whatever they had. Still, something about it. It didn't feel like history. It felt recent. I moved deeper. That's when I saw the can. Beans, still glossy, wrapper intact. Expiry date, July 11th, 2018. That was today. My scalp went cold, but I didn't leave. I should have left. Instead, I told myself someone else must have come earlier. Another explorer. We were just passing shadows. But then I saw more. A pair of boots, too clean. A blanket that looked freshly laid. A plastic bottle half full. Someone was here. Maybe still was. And the smell. It got worse. Sour. Meaty. Wet. When I found them, I stopped being real. My body froze and something else moved inside me. 3 corpses. A man, a woman, a boy. The man was stripped to the waist, his belly torn open like roadkill. His intestines had shriveled into black ropes. The woman, I won't write what was done to her. Just that someone hated her. A lot. The boy. God, the boy. He didn't even have a face anymore. I started to sob. My chest collapsed. I tried calling emergency services. No signal. Not even a flicker. I took photos. Not because I wanted to, but because something told me I'd need proof. Proof I was there. Proof I didn't do this. I turned to leave and heard footsteps. Not mine. I collapsed behind a pile of tree limbs near the bunker's entrance, barely daring to breathe. My heart felt like it would claw out of my chest. Then I heard a voice, low, male, German. I'm sorry, you all. I don't speak German. That was my best try. I didn't understand every word, but I understood the tone. I wasn't expecting visitors. He stomped inside, deeper into the bunker, not bothering to look around. And I ran. I don't remember most of it, just branches tearing at my face, my own sobs, the ache in my ribs, the dirt in my mouth. I broke through the tree line onto the road, spotted my car, and nearly screamed when I couldn't open my backpack zipper. And then I saw him. He was climbing up the road from the trees. Big, broad, maybe 60, knife in his hand, stained, eyes so bloodshot they barely looked human. I got in, slammed the lock, just as he hit the window. He screamed, spat, slammed his fists, called me something, flying ratata, or little rat. I drove. I don't remember the road, just trees blurring past at 140 kilometers an hour, and the blood in my mouth from biting my tongue so hard. I told the police everything, showed the photos, gave them the coordinates. They said they'd investigate. I never heard back. I moved, stopped Herbix for good, got therapy, got new locks, slept with a knife for a while. But last week, 5 years later, I got a package, no return address. Inside was a can of beans, expired July 11, 2023. There was a note taped to it. You forgot your spoon. Back in 2004, I was 24, scraping together a living working late night shifts at Taco Bell. It wasn't a good time in my life. The nights were long, greasy, and loud. The place smelled like old meat and burnt tortillas. My manager, barely 18, was an odd one. Clean cut, a jock, an altar boy. The kind of guy whose mom probably still packed his lunch. We became friends somehow. My black eyeliner, heavy boots, and contempt for daylight clashed hard against his bright white sneakers and nervous optimism. But he liked that I could talk to anyone, that I didn't care what people thought. He especially liked my girlfriend. Too much in hindsight. And I liked the way he tried to mold himself into whatever scene we were in. A chameleon. At the goth club, he wore mesh shirts and eyeliner like a little kid in costume. It was ridiculous, but flattering. That someone so clean cut would try to fit into my world. For a while, we were tight. Then things started to crack. He got fired from Taco Bell for making some gross comment to a girl when she bent down to grab cheese from the cooler. Something like, "Hey, while you're down there." Everyone heard it. He acted like it was a joke between friends, but no one was laughing. Then he got caught stealing Gatorade crates from his night job at a gas station. Said he was borrowing them. By then, I was already starting to feel uneasy around him. He always hovered too close, stayed up too late, partied too loud. I told myself he was just trying to find himself. That's what people say, right? Finding themselves. He bought tools, started going to trade school, got into carpentry. Said he loved it. Said it made him feel in control. That word stuck with me for some reason. One night, drunk off his ass, he flipped his car and shattered his leg. Could have died. Should have died. But didn't. And lucky me, I got to pick up the pieces. Rent. Cleaning. Cooking. He wouldn't even wash the dishes. My dishes. Mold grew in the sink like something alive. I told him to use paper plates. He did, then left them piled in corners, greasy and sagging with rot. When he healed up and started making money again, the parties began. Loud, chaotic things. Strangers stumbling through our apartment, the air thick with weed and spilled beer. I'd lie in bed, listening to them laugh. Those laughs that always sound just a little off when you're half asleep. He'd fight with me when I'd ask him to quiet down. One night, he hurled a beer bottle at my head, missed by inches. That was it. I packed up and left. Years passed. I finished college, moved far away, northern Wisconsin. Quiet job at a small TV station, a new life, normal, finally. Then in 2012, over breakfast with my girlfriend, I got a text from an old friend back home. "Hey, what's your old roommate's last name?" I told him. Dunt. Even sent a picture. He responded instantly. "Is this him?" I looked. It was a photo of a mugshot. Will, my old roommate. His face, older but still wearing that same blank expression he always had, like his mind had shut off for a second. Then, my friend sent me the whole front page of the newspaper. I felt the coffee rise in my throat. Convicted of murder. His girlfriend, a courthouse clerk, never missed a day of work, then vanished. 3 days. No call, no show. Her boss, a retired detective, called in a wellness check. Will answered the door, hands outstretched like he expected the cuffs. Like he welcomed them. Inside, the house was spotless. Too spotless. Fresh drywall, the scent of bleach. Behind that new drywall, they found black contractor bags, sealed tight. Inside was her, in pieces. He'd hit her in a drunk rage, threw an ashtray. She cracked her skull on the counter. And then, instead of calling for help, he finished it. Strangled her. Cut her up with his saws, all those brand new tools he once bragged about. He skinned her, used an X-Acto knife, stuffed her behind the walls. I stared at the photo, that blank face, those familiar eyes, and then I remembered something. That night he threw the bottle at me. He missed. But he didn't look surprised. He didn't apologize. Just watched me clean the glass off the floor, breathing heavy, his face blank and calm. And suddenly, I don't think he missed. I think he was practicing. I was 12 the night something inside me snapped awake. Something I didn't understand at the time. Something cold. My mom had taken a job years earlier at a dingy laundromat tucked behind a row of forgotten strip malls. We knew the owner, and the money helped. I started going with her, supposedly to help. Clean out lint traps, sweep the corners, take out trash, etc. But really, I tagged along to protect her. I knew what kind of people drifted through there after hours. Drunk, high, desperate. I saw things most kids weren't supposed to. We worked the night shifts, just the two of us. And no matter how many times my mom told me to stay home, I refused. I was a kid, but I was already on high alert. I didn't trust the dark. I didn't trust the silence. One night, around closing time, we noticed the front door lock had been busted. Not picked, not broken into, just tampered with. The weird part? The place had been open all day. Anyone could have come and gone without force. But something about that bent metal, twisted like a broken bone, made my stomach turn. My mom texted her boss, brushed it off, and told me to keep watch. I agreed, but my eyes kept drifting to the shadows outside. It was around 9:30 when I sat down with my sketchbook. Drawing helped keep the unease down, like scribbling out demons before they could crawl up from under the tile. I just started shading a figure when the front door creaked open. That sound will always haunt me, like the breath of something that shouldn't exist. My mom looked up from the supply closet and called out, "We're closed." A voice answered, male, too calm, too smooth. "Just wanted a drink," he said. My mom, ever too trusting, told him to be quick. She disappeared back behind the shelves, leaving me out front, alone. He walked past me to the vending machine, or so I thought. The silence stretched. No coins, no clunk of soda dropping. Just nothing. I didn't look up at first. I didn't want to. But something felt off, like gravity itself had shifted, like the air got heavier. When I finally turned my head, I saw him. Tall, gray-haired, wearing a faded brown jacket like something pulled out of a lost and found bin. But it was his smile that froze me in place. Wide. Too wide. Like someone pretending to be human. He was staring directly at me. I gave him a nervous smile, just to acknowledge him, then quickly turned back to my sketchbook. Shuffle. I heard it before I saw it. I glanced back. He was closer. Still facing the vending machine, but his head was tilted towards me. Neck stretched unnaturally far, like a puppet forced into a new angle. I froze. My breath caught. My hands went numb. He kept smiling. Every time I looked away, I'd hear it. Shuffle. Closer. Shuffle. Even closer. I reached for my bag, my knife, except it wasn't there. I had left it on my dresser that night. Of course I had. He never blinked. I considered screaming, but the sound wouldn't come out. So I stared back, trembling, hoping that eye contact might make him hesitate. After what felt like forever, he finally turned, smiled wider. "You two have a good night," he said. Then he left. Relief hit me so fast I almost sobbed. I stood up on shaky legs, ready to splash cold water on my face, until I saw him. Outside, sitting on the bench, still watching. I ran to the supply closet, slammed the door behind me, breathless, barely able to speak. My mom's face turned stone. She grabbed her pepper spray and told me to run to the car. She'd follow and get between us if she had to. I bolted. As I sprinted past him, he stood up, calmly, casually. He took a step towards me. "That's a nice car," he said to my mom. "Is that the 2003 model? I used to drive one just like it." But his eyes were locked on me. My mom ignored him, got in, locked the doors, peeled out of the lot as fast as she could. I ducked down low, but I could still see him through the window. He raised his hand and waved goodbye. And then, instead of walking away, he turned and disappeared around the back of the building, into the dark. I didn't sleep that night. My skin still crawls remembering it. But it wasn't until a few days later that something truly horrifying happened. We came back to work like normal. Everything looked fine, except for one thing. Behind the building, where no one should be, was a stack of old, water-stained mattresses. We hadn't noticed them before. We didn't put them there. When my mom asked the boss about them, he said they'd been showing up over the past few weeks, one at a time, like someone had been living there. I walked over despite my fear, drawn like a moth to a flame. And that's when I saw it. Carved into the wall in messy, uneven letters, directly behind the bench where he sat, were 3 words. "See you soon." Late summer 2009, I was a wide-eyed graduate student, new to London's sprawling chaos, hunting for a flat to call home. I don't know the city's dark corners, its veiled threats hidden behind cheerful facades. Desperate for something cheap, I scoured listings in the city's rougher edges, where the air felt heavy and unspoken warnings. Some places were nightmares, mold creeping up walls like blackened veins, or shoebox rooms that reeked of despair and old grease. The photos online lied, all clever angles and soft lighting, masking the rot beneath. By the third day of viewings, my optimism was a fraying thread, my soul bruised from 6 consecutive letdowns. I was teetering on the edge of collapse, though I'd never admit it then. The next viewing, late the following afternoon, was my last hope. A females-only listing in Camden, its photos promising a clean, airy flat above a row of shops. The idea of a women-only space wrapped around me like a shield. Safety in a city that felt like it was watching, waiting. I'm not cynical, but I know the world. Some men are predators, their smiles sharp as knives. A girl's only flat wasn't just appealing, it was a necessity. Getting a viewing slot so quickly should have set off alarms, but I was too desperate, too naive to see the trap being laid. I boarded the bus to Camden, my stomach a knot of hope and dread. The landlady, Jan, had been texting me, her messages warm but oddly urgent. I told myself it was just her being thorough, but as the bus rumbled closer, a chill settled in my bones, like the city itself was whispering for me to turn back. I ignored it, texting Jan as I stepped off the bus, my heart pounding. Her reply was instant, but it wasn't the simple acknowledgement I expected. "Terribly busy," she wrote. "My brother-in-law will show you around." The words hit like a slap. "Female only," she'd said. So much for that. I swallowed my unease, rationalizing that Jan was just a busy property owner, juggling tenants across London. I couldn't let one detail derail me. The flats sat above a grimy strip of shops, their signs faded, windows smudged with neglect. I knocked on the heavy door as instructed, my pulse quickening. It creaked open, and there he was, Jan's brother-in-law. His eyes, small and glinting like a rat's, raked over me, lingering too long. His smile was a crooked slash, more threat than welcome. The air around him felt wrong, oily, like stepping into a room where something had died. I forced a polite nod, but my skin crawled, every instinct screaming to run. I didn't. I'd pinned everything on this place, and I wasn't about to let a creepy vibe ruin it. He led me inside, his footsteps heavy, deliberate. The flat was nothing like the photos. The air was stale, thick with the ghost of cigarette smoke and something fouler, like rot seeping from the walls. Clothes and junk were strewn about, signs of someone living there. A man, from the look of it. My heart sank. I asked when the current tenant was leaving, and his answer was a gut punch. "This place is off the market," he said, his voice low, almost mocking. "This is the only unit we've got. It's shared." Shared. The word hung like a noose. I asked if the other tenant was female, my voice steady despite the dread coiling inside me. He dodged, muttering about showing me the bathroom, his eyes never leaving me as he shuffled forward. The bedroom wasn't awful, but it wasn't right either. Sparse, with a mattress that sagged like it had seen too many nightmares. I asked again, firmer, "Is this female only?" He tilted his head, his expression unreadable, and said he'd need to check with Jan. His vagueness was a warning, but I pressed on, asking to see the bathroom. He opened the door, and a wave of stench hit me. Mold, decay, something chemical that burned my throat. I winced, stepping back, and saw a flicker in his eyes, like he'd caught me noticing something I shouldn't. "Let's see the kitchen," I lied, just wanting distance from that smell. From him. As I moved toward the front door, my mind raced. The flat screamed, "Man!" Not just any man, but this man. The scattered boots, the stale cologne, the careless mess. It was his. I pulled out my phone, dialing Jan's number. My eyes locked on him. His pocket buzzed, the ringtone cutting through the silence. His face froze, a deer in headlights. And I knew. There was no Jan. He was the one texting me, luring me here under a false name. My blood turned to ice, but a strange calm took over. I'd caught him, red-handed, a predator unmasked. I didn't hold back. "Were you trying to trick girls into living with you?" I spat, my voice sharp with rage. His face flushed, but he stammered denials, his lies crumbling. I called him out. Pathetic, perverse, a creep who probably had a record. Each word was a blade, and I saw the moment I cut too deep. His eyes darkened, his jaw clenched. The air shifted, heavy with violence. I'd pushed him past shame into something primal, something dangerous. He lunged, his bulk filling the corridor. I bolted for the door, my heart hammering. But he was faster than he looked. His hand snagged my hair, yanking my head back with a force that made my scalp scream. I stumbled, my knees buckling as he dragged me backward toward the flat. I screamed, my voice raw, echoing off the walls. But the other flats stayed silent, their doors like tombstones. No one was coming. I clawed at his hand, my nails digging into his skin, but he pulled harder, my vision blurring with pain. We reached the doorway, and I thrashed, kicking blindly, praying for a hit. My foot connected, and he grunted, but his grip didn't falter. Then, a sharp blow to my face, his fist heavy as a hammer. My left eye exploded in white light, and the world tilted. I don't know how long I was out, seconds or minutes, but when I came to, I was on the bedroom floor, the stench of that bathroom choking me. He was dragging me toward it, his breath ragged, his eyes wild with intent. My neck throbbed and a primal fear gripped me. If he got me in there, I was done. I rolled, ignoring the agony in my scalp, and grabbed his wrists. He hadn't expected me to fight, not after that blow. I sank my teeth into his flesh, biting until I tasted blood. His fingers spasmed, releasing my hair, and I lunged, clawing at his face. My nails found his eyes, sinking into soft tissue. And he howled, a sound that rattled my bones. He shoved me off and I hit the floor, hard, dizzy, but I scrambled up, running for the door as he screamed curses. His hands pressed to his bleeding face. I burst onto the street, the metal stairs clanging under my feet. A woman passing by gasped, her eyes wide at the blood streaming down my face. "Call the police!" I screamed, unzipping my jacket, searching for wounds I couldn't feel. My legs wobbled, the world spinning, but the crowd grew, strangers drawn by my panic. I pointed at the door, shouting, "He's in there!" until the police arrived. At the hospital, I learned the cut on my face didn't need stitches, but the terror lingered, a shadow that never left. The man was arrested, sentenced to 6 years. The jury couldn't see the darkness in his mind, the plans he had for me. I tried to move on, to bury the memory, but it clawed its way back. Months later, cleaning out my bag, I found a crumpled note, slipped into a pocket I never used. It was in his handwriting, though. I'd never seen it before. "You are perfect. I'll find you again." He'd written it before I arrived, before I fought back, before I escaped. He'd planned to keep me, and somehow, he'd known I'd come. The summer of 1975 still clings to me like a fever dream. The kind that wakes you in the middle of the night with the sheets damp and the sense that something is still watching from the corner of the room. I was 17, freshly graduated, filled with illusions of freedom. My first job was at a car dealership in the city, a reception gig my daddy helped me get since he worked in the service department. It was supposed to be the beginning of my independence. He called it spreading my wings. But sometimes you spread your wings too close to something that bites. The dealership was tucked between smoke-choked factories and machine shops in one of those dead zones of the city where even the birds seem too tired to sing. No cafes, no boutiques, just oil-stained pavement, chain-link fences, and the sound of metal screaming against metal. I pretended I liked it, liked the grit, the pace, the rhythm of work. But the truth was, the silence between voices out there had teeth. My daily task, aside from answering phones and filling papers, was to walk the cash deposits, thousands in bills, to the bank a few blocks away. No security, no one to escort me. Just me, a girl in a sundress with a purse heavy enough to tempt God. That day, the air was wrong. I should have felt it. I remember stepping out of the dealership with the purse slung over my shoulder, walking past shuttered garages and men with grease beneath their fingernails who didn't look up from their smoke breaks. I was maybe 2 blocks from the bank when the van came. It didn't crawl up like in the movies. It screeched, angry, abrupt, alive. I spun just as the side door slid open and a pair of filthy hands yanked me inside. The door slammed shut. Then blackness. Not literal, but close. The kind that narrows your vision and dulls sounds until your pulse is the only thing you hear. There were 5 of them, 5 grinning men, eyes dilated, voices slurred. The smell of sweat, stale beer, and something chemical filled my nose. The back of the van had been gutted and lined with a stained mattress, crushed cans, and empty pill bottles. This wasn't their first ride. One of them said they'd been waiting for someone pretty. They didn't ask my name, didn't ask what I had in my purse. They didn't care. I was just there, just a body, a toy. But they didn't know who they'd picked. They didn't know I knew how to smile through my teeth, how to talk like nothing was wrong. They didn't know I would weaponize charm. So I laughed. I laughed like I was at a sleepover, like this was some dumb joke. I told them my boss would be furious if I didn't get back soon. I told them there'd be hell to pay, that somebody would be looking for me right now. I mentioned the news, the serial killer who was hunting girls in the city, Bundy. I told them my sisters and I cut our hair short, trying not to be targets. I watched the light shift in their eyes, saw hesitation. They didn't want trouble. They just wanted fun. Eventually, the van slowed. One of them said, "She's not worth it." Another called me a buzzkill. The door opened near some grocery store, and they shoved me out. Just like that. I stumbled inside, still gripping the purse. $3,000 in cash. I called my father, then the police, but nothing came of it. No arrests, no faces matched, no plates, no leads. The cops shrugged it off, said I was lucky, said it was just a joyride, said I wasn't hurt, so it wasn't serious. One of them actually said, "You must have given them a reason to let you go." Like it was a compliment. But here's the thing. I think I know why they let me go. Not because I was smart or brave or lucky, but because I reminded them of someone. Years later, in a box of old papers and forgotten photographs, I found a faded newspaper clipping. A missing girl. Same year, same city. Just weeks before they found me. Her name was Lauren V. She had long dark hair, a summer job, and was last seen walking to the very same bank. She was never found. I stared at her picture for a long time. Then, at my reflection in the mirror. We would have been sisters. Sometimes I wonder if when those men looked at me, they weren't seeing me at all. They were seeing her, the one they didn't let go. And maybe, just maybe, they weren't finished yet. I tried to forget about the girl in the clipping, Lauren V., but she lingered. Not just in my memory, but in my bones. In the moments between sleep and waking, I'd see her eyes in the mirror instead of mine. Same dark hair, same timid smile, same fate almost suffered. In the years that followed, I told the story at parties over drinks, once even to a group of backpackers in Peru. People always called me lucky. They laughed, wide-eyed, at the part where I charmed my way out of a kidnapping. But every time they said lucky, I'd feel something cold settle in the back of my throat. Because Lauren wasn't lucky, and I think I was never supposed to be either. It was nearly 30 years later, in 2004, when I found myself back in that city for a photography job. The skyline had changed, but the underbelly still smelled the same. Hot concrete, burnt rubber, and desperation. I had time before my meeting, so I walked. Past the old neighborhoods, past the ghosts of muffler shops and boarded-up diners. I don't know why I turned down that particular alley. I think something called me. That's where I saw it. The old dealership building. Faded, but still standing. A shell of a place. Spray paint on the garage doors. Shattered glass where the showroom once glowed. My feet moved without permission, carrying me toward the bank where I used to walk the deposits. But there was something else now. A rusted gate chained to a side lot. a place that hadn't existed or hadn't been visible back then. It was unlocked. Of course it was. I pushed it open. Beyond it sat the skeleton of a long-abandoned warehouse, maybe once used for detailing cars or storing parts. But now it was something else. Graffiti on every wall, feral cat droppings, broken bottles, and the bones of couches long since collapsed. But then I saw the mattress, mildewed, sunken, still there. After all these years, something buzzed in my ears. My knees shook. I don't remember kneeling. I just remember reaching out and brushing the corner of the mattress with my fingers. It moved. Not the mattress, the floor beneath it. Curious, I tugged it aside. The floor groaned, revealing a small metal trapdoor with a recessed handle. No lock. I lifted it. A ladder descended into darkness. The air that rose up was damp and foul, like something long buried. Every instinct screamed to leave. But I couldn't. I had to know. I climbed down into the dark, using my phone's flashlight. The space beneath the warehouse was bigger than it had any right to be. A crude basement, concrete walls, rusted pipes, and writing. All over. Names, dozens of names, dates, numbers, and drawings. Grotesque figures, crude, childlike etchings of screaming faces and bleeding eyes. And in the far corner, a trunk. Wooden, warped, the kind you'd see in a pirate movie or in an attic. I opened it. Inside were clothes. Dresses, shoes, hair ribbons. Beneath them, wallets, IDs, photos. I rifled through them with trembling fingers until I saw it. A photo ID. High school. Lauren V. Missing. Not lost. Taken. Kept. There was another and another. All girls. All missing around the same time that I had been taken. And then, at the very bottom of the trunk, my name. Cecilia M. Written in ink on the back of a Polaroid I had never seen. Me in the back of that van, laughing, playing along. But how? Who took it? Suddenly, I wasn't alone. A voice rasped from behind me. Hoarse, slow, and cracked like old leather. You were the one that got away. I turned. It wasn't one of the 5 men. Not exactly. It was worse. It was him. The one who took the pictures. The one who kept the names. The one they called Uncle in that van. The real one in charge. And he was still alive. I don't remember the struggle, only that it ended with blood and splinters and my fingernails torn from clawing up the ladder. I ran into the street, screaming, dragging pieces of the past with me. The police didn't laugh this time. They found bones beneath the concrete. Not just Lauren's, at least 7 girls. The man, James Ellerby, died before the trial. Stroke in a cell, they said. But I still don't sleep without the lights on. I still check beneath every floorboard when I stay somewhere new. Because I know now, they didn't let me go. They marked me for later. And if I hadn't come back, he would have finished what he started. When I was 16, I told my dad I wanted to be an artist. He froze, his eyes darkening as if glimpsing some unspeakable fate, and said, "Hope you like buttered noodles." The words slithered out, heavy with malice, like a curse disguised as advice. I chuckled, thinking he was joking, but those words burrowed into me, a grim prophecy. I did grow to like buttered noodles, because they were all I could stomach when starvation became my shadow. He wasn't talking about food. He was warning me of a life where hunger would claw at my soul. And damn, was he right. I skipped college after high school, chasing my dream with a fool's fervor. I toiled in soul-crushing jobs, greasy diner counters, flickering gas station lights, until I'd scraped together enough to flee to San Francisco. There, I landed in a decaying Hunter's Point apartment, a festering den shared with so-called artists who painted nothing but their veins with dope. The air reeked of stale pot and desperation, the walls vibrating with the chaos of crime outside and debauchery within. My bag boy job paid pennies, barely enough to keep me from collapsing. My roommates, trust fund parasites, squandered their parents' money on pills and powder, their easels gathering dust. I knew I had to escape before that place swallowed me whole. For a month, I hunted jobs with a ferocity that left me hollow. My shoes worn to nothing, my hope a fraying thread. I was on the verge of slinking back home, tail between my legs, when I met Greg outside a liquor store. His face was a mask of despair, his cigarette trembling as he asked for a light. I lit it, and he spilled his guts. His marketing job was on the line because a graphic designer had ghosted him, leaving him without logos for a big client. I saw my chance. I worked through the night, crafting those logos for a fraction of what he'd been quoted. That was the spark of our partnership, a lifeline that pulled me out of that hellhole and into a world where I could breathe. With real money coming in, I scoured San Francisco for a better place. I toured apartments, each one a compromise, until I found an ad for a one-bedroom in Mill Valley. It was vague, almost too good to be true, but when I arrived, my jaw dropped. The apartment was a guest house on the grounds of a Mediterranean revival villa. All warm tiles and shadowed archways, like something from a fever dream. The landlord, a man in his late 50s with eyes that seemed to pierce through me, showed me around. When he said the rent was $650 a month, I nearly choked. It was a steal, but something in his voice, a cold, calculated edge, made my skin prickle. I was desperate, so I poured out my story, begging for the place. I offered more money, $700, then $750, but he waved it off. "I don't want more money," he said, his gaze unyielding. "I want someone quiet, someone who minds their own business. Cash, on time, every month." I swore I'd be a ghost, invisible. My only trace, the envelope of cash on the first. He studied me, his silence suffocating, then nodded. "Keys on the first." I could have danced down that driveway, but as I left, I felt his eyes boring into my back, like he was measuring me for a coffin. Moving into that guest house felt like a triumph. I had steady work, a friend in Greg, and a space that didn't reek of failure. But the villa loomed over everything. its windows like eyes that never blinked. The first few weeks were quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. I saw the landlord a handful of times, his movements precise, almost mechanical. His wife, though, she was a phantom. I began to wonder if she even existed. Then, one evening, he knocked on my door, his face a mask of forced calm. "I'm going fishing this weekend," he said, "Friday to Sunday." I nodded, but before he turned away, he added, "My wife's unwell. If she seems strange, don't worry. She's not herself." His words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken warning. I mumbled something about helping if needed, but as he walked away, I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Fear, or maybe something darker. That Friday, I watched him load his truck with coolers, his movements methodical, like a man performing a ritual. That night was still, the villa's silhouette a black void against the sky. Around 2 a.m., I was in the bathroom, the window open to the muggy San Francisco air, when a sound stopped me cold. A faint, rhythmic sobbing, like someone was choking on their grief. It was a woman, and it was coming from the main house. I stepped outside, the gravel crunching under my feet, and cut my hands to my ear. A trick my dad taught me. The sound sharpened, pinpointing to the pool area behind the villa. Against my better judgment, I crept closer, the air growing colder with every step. There she was, the landlord's wife, slumped on a patio chair, her head in her hands, her sobs cutting through the night. Her hair hung like a veil, obscuring her face. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. No response, just the relentless sobbing. I tried again, louder. "Do you need help?" The crying stopped abruptly, and she lifted her head, her eyes locking onto mine through strands of greasy hair. They were empty, glassy, like she was staring through me into some abyss. I stammered, introducing myself as the tenant, offering help, but she just stared, unblinking, her silence louder than the tears. Then, without a word, she rose and glided back into the house, the door clicking shut like a guillotine. I stood there, heart pounding, the night pressing in around me. I told myself she was drunk or sick, like he'd said. But those eyes, they weren't human. They were something else, something that didn't belong in this world. The next night, I came home late from drinks with Greg, the driveway security lights blazing as I stumbled towards the guest house. I glanced up and froze. There she was, on the villa's second-floor balcony, a dark silhouette against the glowing curtains. She stood motionless, her gaze fixed on me, or maybe past me, into the void. I gave a weak wave, hoping to break the spell, but she didn't move. The air felt thick, charged with something malevolent. I hurried inside, locking the door, but sleep didn't come easy. I kept seeing her eyes, those hollow pits boring into me. Sunday morning, I headed to the store for creamer, and there she was again, standing on the front lawn, her back to me. I kept my head down, expecting more silence, but as my footsteps crunched, she spun around, her face contorted with rage. "Who the hell are you?" she screamed, her voice raw, unhinged. "Get off my property." I tried to explain, showing her the key, my voice steady despite the dread coiling in my gut. She didn't listen. She just kept shrieking about calling the cops. I shook my head, muttering about Hunter's Point being better than this madness, and left. When I returned, a cop car sat in the driveway, its lights casting red and blue shadows across the villa's facade. The wife was there, gesturing wildly at two officers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. She spotted me and pointed, screaming, "That's him! That's the intruder!" My stomach dropped, but I stayed calm, showing the cops my key, my wallet, the proof I live there. They nodded, their eyes sliding to the wife, who was swaying, her words slurred. "She's out of it," one cop muttered. "Doesn't even know what day it is." They escorted her inside, told me to call if anything else happened, and left. When the landlord returned that evening, I caught him in the driveway, recounting the ordeal. He listened, his face unreadable, until I mentioned the cops. His eyes snapped to mine, sharp and predatory, like I'd crossed some invisible line. "It won't happen again," he said, his voice low, before storming off. I stood there, unease curling in my chest. His reaction wasn't right. It was too controlled, too deliberate, like he was hiding something far worse than a troubled wife. Weeks later, Greg picked me up for a Giants game, his face pale as he stared at the villa. "You live here?" he asked, his voice trembling. On the way to Candlestick Park, he told me the story. 5 years ago, the landlord's daughter, a high school senior, vanished. She told her parents she was going to the park and never came back. No witnesses, no trace, just gone. The case was infamous, plastered across the news, the parents pleading for answers. Greg recognized the villa from those press conferences. The missing girl was their daughter. The game was a blur, my mind consumed by the revelation. The wife's behavior, her crying, her staring, suddenly made sense. She was drowning in grief, probably pills or booze, her mind fractured by loss. I felt a pang of guilt for judging her, but the landlord's coldness, his insistence on privacy, gnawed at me. Something was wrong, something deeper than tragedy. One day, as I prepared to deliver my rent check, I overheard them arguing through the villa's door. His voice was venomous, accusing her of wallowing in self-pity. She screamed back, "I wouldn't be like this if it wasn't for what you did." He roared, "What I did? You're the one who got us into this mess." I backed away, heart racing, and slipped the check under the door with a note about low water pressure. Their words echoed in my skull, a puzzle with pieces too dark to touch. I told Greg I was thinking of moving out. He wasn't surprised, but I hesitated. The rent was cheap, and I figured they needed the money, especially after their loss. But the villa felt like a tomb, its silence suffocating, its shadows hiding something unspeakable. By late October, I'd almost convinced myself to stay, to ignore the creeping dread. Then, on November 3rd, 1989, everything shattered. I was heading out to meet Greg, the evening air crisp, when a swarm of cops stormed the driveway. I made a dumb joke about trick-or-treating, but before I could finish, they drew their guns, shouting at me to get down. I hit the gravel, heart hammering, screaming that it was just a joke. They cuffed me, their faces hard, and I knew. She called them again. But this time was different. They weren't bored. They were on edge, their radios crackling with urgency. At the precinct, they read the charges: kidnapping, false imprisonment, and, insanely, practicing medicine without a license. I laughed, a manic sound, because it was absurd. Kidnapping? Medicine? I demanded answers, but they grilled me about the landlord, his whereabouts, his fishing trip. Bullshit, one cop spat. Where is he? They thought I was covering for him, threatening me with life in prison. I told them everything, how he'd warned me to stay away, how his wife was unhinged, but they barely listened. Eventually, they let me go, warning me not to leave town. You might not see your landlords for a while, one said, his tone ominous. I crashed on Greg's couch when the guest house's utilities were cut, my belongings trapped in that cursed place. Over weeks, the truth trickled out, each piece more horrifying than the last. The cops found the landlord's daughter, not dead, not alive, but in a coma, hidden in a squalid Los Ranchitos apartment. She was emaciated, tethered to stolen medical equipment, kept alive by her father's twisted devotion. He'd used his pharma connections to get the machines, but why not a hospital? Because his wife had caused the injury. 5 years ago, the wife and daughter had fought, a vicious row that ended with the daughter slapping her mother. In a blind rage, the wife grabbed an ornament and struck her. The blow so brutal, it left the girl comatose. Instead of facing justice, they hid her, covering up the crime to protect their warped sense of family. The landlord maintained the lie, tending to his daughter in secret, while the wife spiraled into guilt and addiction. I thought that was the worst of it, the darkest truth. I was wrong. One night, as I packed my things from the guest house, I found a small locked box under the floorboards, its edges stained with something dark. I pried it open, my hands shaking. Inside was a journal, its pages filled with the landlord's meticulous handwriting. It detailed his daughter's condition, the equipment, the cover-up, but it didn't stop there. The last entry, dated the day I moved in, read, "The new tenant is perfect, young, desperate, oblivious. If they find her, he'll take the fall. I've made sure of it." He'd chosen me, not for the rent, but as a scapegoat. The cops' questions, the charges, they weren't random. He'd planted evidence, woven me into his lie, knowing I'd be too naive to suspect. I burned the journal, left the guest house, and never looked back. But sometimes in the dead of night, I still hear her sobbing, and I wonder if I ever really escaped that house. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true scary stories. Before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the rest of the membership and the new listeners. Thank you so much for your continued and devoted support. I appreciate you very much. And to the new listeners, thank you for choosing Back to Ashes as your escape. or vocal melatonin to fall asleep to. I appreciate you. If you're sleeping, I hope Summerland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. Until next time, please stay vigilant and please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.